Before I started the carnivore diet, I had incredibly low energy levels. Whenever my morning alarm went off, I would snooze it as many times as I possibly could so I could get as much sleep as humanly possible. Throughout the day, my energy levels would bounce up and down, and by noon, I was typically ready to go to bed that night. But when I switched to the carnivore diet, this all changed. I went from being constantly tired to having superhuman-like energy levels. But this wasn't always the case. Throughout my carnivore journey, there have been a few things that I've changed that have significantly improved my energy levels, which I'll share with you today. A lot of people start the carnivore diet and think, I've removed all the toxins from my diet, I should feel amazing instantly. But the thing is, your body is going through a drastic change. Most people for their entire lives, their primary fuel source was carbohydrates. However, on carnivore, your primary fuel source is fats. Now, the thing about this is that carbohydrates and fats have a very different structure, and it takes a while for your body to get used to running on fats. This is called becoming fat adapted, and it takes a very different amount of time for different individuals. Now, at the start of carnivore, this is made worse because many people get what is known as keto flu. Essentially, how this works is your body is so inefficient at running on fat that you get these set of flu-like symptoms. You have low energy, headaches, you feel very tired. The good thing about this, however, is that it typically only lasts a couple of days, and then you start feeling okay again. However, what happens is that over time, as your body gets more efficient at running on fats, day by day, you notice your energy increasing. For many people, it only takes days to start feeling good. However, for others, it can take a lot longer. Now, there's a lot more to energy levels on the carnivore diet than just fat adaptation, which we'll get into shortly. However, if you're new to carnivore, this is the reason you don't have superhuman energy yet. When you first start carnivore, you either go down one of two paths. Now, on one path, you have the group that gets super hungry. You see, this group here, typically they haven't eaten that much meat in the past, so their body gets the sweet taste of meat with all the nutrients that it provides, and it essentially goes, give me more of this stuff. You get a massive appetite increase and you find yourself eating a lot. And then you have the other group that just goes on carnivore and you're just never hungry, essentially after a day or two. Now, luckily, if you are in this group that has the massive appetite increase, you usually end up on this path in a couple of weeks once your body has topped up in all the nutrients that it needs. But what often tends to happen instantly for this group and after a couple of weeks for this group is that essentially you start to never get hungry, you forget to eat, and you end up undereating. When you undereat, you don't provide yourself with enough energy. This is often made a lot worse in leaner individuals. Usually people who are overweight can get away with this for a while because they have extra body fat to tap into. But what happens is when you're lean and you continue to undereat, your body has nowhere to produce its energy from, so you just don't feel that good. The other problem with undereating is this flow-on effect. You don't eat enough, so you don't sleep very well. There was one lady I worked with who was not sleeping very well on carnivore, which was causing her energy levels to not quite be where she wanted them to be. So we made one very simple change. Her nighttime meal, we increased the amount she was eating, and instantaneously her sleep was better and her energy increased. Now, the very simple solution to this is to eat more. But if you're someone who seriously struggles to eat enough on carnivore, you just have a genetically very small appetite, maybe you do want to include a bit more dairy. Dairy tends to up the appetite so you can eat a bit more. Now, if you're trying to lose weight, it's not ideal, but if you're someone who needs to consume more energy, this is a good thing. Now, to completely contradict myself, some people do the opposite and they actually overeat. When you eat a massive meal, your body goes into this rest and digest state. Now, this is incredibly evolutionary consistent. Throughout most of history, if you had a big meal, you were successful for the day, you could now relax. And essentially, for every carnivorous species on the planet, after they eat a big meal, they go to sleep. We've all experienced this ourselves. If you eat a massive meal, you have no motivation, you're tired, you're lethargic, all you want to do is rest. So what I typically like to do is have lighter, smaller meals throughout the day and a big meal in the evening. Now, a lot of people say you shouldn't have a big meal in the evening because it affects your sleep quality. I'm very skeptical of this. Like I said, all the carnivorous species, they eat a big meal and they sleep. When I eat a big meal, I want to sleep. And I do find that whenever I have a massive meal before bed, I sleep very well. The studies that show having a large meal close to bedtime impairs sleep quality are done on individuals on diets high in carbohydrates and seed oils. Now, if you eat a massive meal of pasta and your blood sugar's through the roof and then you try and sleep, of course it's going to impair your sleep quality. But if you eat an ancestrally appropriate, proper human diet meal before you go to bed, I cannot see how that can have the same negative effects as the pasta would. In order to not confuse you, you should aim for 1 gram of protein and 1 gram of fat per pound of lean body mass, which essentially means how much you would weigh if you didn't have any fat. Now keep in mind, if you're an active individual, maybe you work in construction and then you train after work, you're going to want a lot more than that. But as a general rule for your average person, 1 gram of each is a great place to start, and then you can adjust as necessary. Another reason why many people have poor energy is that they're going through caffeine withdrawal. People hop on carnivore and they remove all plants, including things like coffee. However, here's the thing, when you quit caffeine, you can have severe withdrawal symptoms, for some people up to even a month. Now for most people it lasts nowhere near this long, but if you've just hopped on carnivore, you're trying to get fat adapted, and you're going through caffeine withdrawals, it can just result in you feeling terrible. So that is another thing you might want to consider. Now this next one is very nuanced. When you start carnivore, you enter a low carbohydrate state, which means you retain less electrolytes. This is why I recommend to people when they start carnivore, put a lot more salt on your meals than you typically would. If you don't consume enough salt, it messes with your body's ability to retain fluids, so you get dehydrated, which leaves you with poor energy, poor mood. You can also get cramps. Now what happens is that over time your body gets used to this low carbohydrate state and it becomes more and more efficient at retaining electrolytes. This is where it gets a bit messy because different people do better on different amounts of salt. Me, for example, I find that if I don't consume enough salt, I can start cramping up. Whereas other people, such as Steak and Butter Girl, she finds that when she removes salt from her diet completely, she feels a lot better. Now this is very person to person dependent, so if you've been on carnivore for a while and your energy isn't quite where you hoped it would be, try playing around with the amount of salt you're consuming. But like I said, if you're just starting out, have way more than you typically would. This next one is by far the most common, not enough fat. Like I talked about earlier, on carnivore, fat is your energy. If you're constantly consuming lean meats, you're just not going to feel good. It's really that straightforward. A 1-to-1 ratio of fat to protein, like I talked about earlier, again, a great place to start. Now before I get into the second most common reason, which I call no man's land, let's first look at this from a philosophical point of view, which I feel is often overlooked. Do you know who the most energetic people on the planet are? It's people who have found their life's calling. These people, regardless as to what they eat, find unlimited energy. They work 17-hour days building their company, or maybe they're an athlete and they just train all day. No matter how perfect your diet is, if every single aspect of your life you find no joy, you wake up in the morning thinking about what you have to do for the day and it gives you zero joy whatsoever. Of course you're not going to have insane levels of energy. There's a certain intangible, unquantifiable element in regards to energy levels. At this point, science can't explain it. But if you have a purpose, you have a love for life, your body will just naturally produce more energy. Now these people who do the 17-hour workdays, would they have more energy if they switched over to a proper human diet? Of course they would. But I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who wonder why, even after being on carnivore for a long time, they still don't have this joy for life. They still don't have this insane level of energy. I would highly suspect it's because you are not fulfilling what your life's purpose is. Now, what is your life's purpose? Well, according to Robert Greene in his book Mastery, he believes that your life's purpose is what you have this natural inclination to do. The thing that you have in the back of your mind where you think, man, it'd be nice to do that. Anyways, enough philosophical talk. Back to the carnivore chat. Another problem a lot of people have is they're in no man's land. Now, when you eat a high-fat diet, you get into a state of ketosis. However, if you consume too many carbohydrates, you won't be in ketosis. However, these people, they aren't consuming enough carbohydrates to run on carbohydrates and feel good. So they're sort of in this no man's land where their body's constantly switching between the two fuel sources and you just feel average. I put up a poll the other day to my subscribers and I found something very interesting. Only 14% of people stay strict on carnivore. So I'm sure that in this 86% of people who aren't completely strict, there are a lot of people that are consuming bread with their meat every night for dinner, or maybe a bit of pasta with their meat every night for dinner. Now, if you do this from time to time, you won't notice too much. But if every single day you're having a significant amount of carbs and you're in this no man's area, it can lead to your energy being very poor. There are also a lot of other factors that people don't consider. Are you getting enough sunlight? Are you super stressed out? Now, stress is a very interesting one. In one study, they got a lot of people who reported being incredibly stressed out, and they divide them into two groups. The people who believed that the stress benefited them. These people thought, yeah, I'm stressed out, but I work better when I'm stressed. And another group of people who thought that the stress caused detriment to them, and that it was just overall negatively impacting their life. And what they found is that the people who believed the stress was bad for them had worse health outcomes than the people that believed it was good for them. The power of the mind is incredible, so that is something to note. My final suggestion on how you can improve your energy levels is to try different versions of the carnivore diet. There are some people who are just hyper responsive to many different things. There are people like Jordan Peterson who need to be on a beef-only carnivore diet to feel their best. I've even heard Dr. Chafee say how he feels best when he eats only ruminant meat. If you are one of these hyper-responsive people and you're eating monogastric animals such as chickens who don't have the super complex digestive system like ruminant animals have. Remember, ruminant animals are animals with these large multi-chambered stomachs which are much better at breaking down everything they eat, and it leaves their flesh a lot more pure, I guess you could say. So these monogastric animals, when we examine their flesh, they still are high in things like linoleic acid, which we know are problematic to certain individuals. Every person is different. We all do best on the proper human diet because, well, it is the proper human diet. But we all do slightly better on different variations of the proper human diet. For me personally, I feel much better when I include certain carnivore foods and exclude other carnivore foods, which I go into in great detail in this video. See you next time.